I've been waiting a long time for this day to get here. Because this is the day when I finally get to meet my grandfather face to face. I am so happy that I will make the United States my home. Now, grandfather and I don't have to write so many letters to each other. But I guess it was the letters we wrote to each other that helped me decide that immigrating to the United States will be very exciting. Immigrating is a word that means moving, usually from one country to another. See, a long time ago, when grandfather and I started writing to each other, I was afraid to move here. I thought that maybe I wouldn't fit in. New school, new friends, even some new family. I don't feel that way anymore. It all started just a few months ago. Dear Grandfather Young, I have heard so many wonderful things about you and the beautiful country you live in. I would like to come to school there one day, but I do not know. I am not sure I would fit in because I am different from American girls. My friend spoke to me about immigration, but it sounded very scary. Could you tell me of this immigration?
Dear granddaughter, I am very happy to hear that you wish to come to America. It is a wonderful country in so many different ways. I know that to immigrate to America is a very exciting adventure because many years ago, before you were born, I immigrated to this country. But before I left, I learned all that I could about immigration and those who came here before I did. I would like to pass what I know down to you. When we speak of immigration, we speak of people moving from one country to another. These people are called immigrants. Immigrants have been coming to the United States of America from all over the world for hundreds of years. Did you know that except for American Indians, everyone who lives in America has an ancestor who was an immigrant? Your ancestors start with your parents, then your grandparents, then great-grandparents, and so on for many years. Immigrants, mostly from Europe, began to arrive in America in the 1600s, and by the early 1700s, many of these Europeans had settled in North America. In the beginning, people from other countries followed explorers to America. Mostly, these people were in search of land, religious freedom, and gold. In time, America grew. As it grew, people immigrated here for many more reasons. Some came to get away from a war in their own country. Some came because there was very little food at home. Some came in search of a job, while still others came for an education. There are many reasons people immigrated to America, but there is one reason they all shared. That reason was hope, hope for a better life.
Dear Grandfather, thank you for the letter about immigration. I did not know that there were so many reasons people from different countries immigrated to the United States. I still have many questions for you. Questions like,
Dear granddaughter, I am very happy to answer your questions about immigration and why immigrants move here from other areas of the world. One of those areas is where we were both born, Southeast Asia. Since 1975, more than 500,000 Southeast Asians have come to the United States. One of the reasons is that some of the people of Southeast Asia are very poor, and they come to the United States to find a better life. Back in time, the gold rush of 1849 brought thousands of Southeast Asian immigrants, mostly Chinese, across the Pacific Ocean to the West Coast. And by 1852, there were about 25,000 Chinese people working in the gold fields. Eventually, less and less gold was being found, so the Chinese were forced to look for other ways to make a living. The Chinese were willing to do all sorts of jobs for low pay in order to stay in America. Some worked in the fields, some fished from boats, and others worked in mines. There were even some Chinese who started their own businesses such as laundry service and cigar factories. And when the Central Pacific Railroad created a railroad to go all the way across the United States, thousands of Chinese helped to build it. At about the same time as the gold rush in the West, about 1.5 million Irish immigrants arrived in the East. They immigrated because their main source of income, the potato crops, had been destroyed by disease. The Irish who were starving were in search of a country where they would be able to survive. By 1850, 2.5 million immigrants had arrived from Europe. They came from countries like England, Ireland, Scotland, Sweden, Norway, and Germany. Immigration at this time was not always by choice, though. 600,000 Africans were brought here from their home in Africa against their will to be slaves in the United States. A slave is a person who is sold like property to another person. These African slaves were forced to work without pay and had no freedom of any kind. In 1865, the United States ended slavery. In the late 1800s, America saw another large wave of immigrants arrive. They came from Asia, Latin America, and Europe to find jobs. America was growing, and jobs could be found here. By the early 1900s, 24 million immigrants had come to America in search of a better life. And they came from just about everywhere in the world, from China, Japan, Mexico, Italy, Greece, Poland, Austria, Hungary, Armenia, and Russia, to name just a few. Those from Europe settled mostly in the East, while immigrants from Latin America and Asia settled in the West and Southwest. By 1920, a quarter of the population of the United States had been born in another country.
Dear grandfather, I never knew so many people came to America from so many countries. I'm wondering, how did they all get there in those early days? Also, where did they all live? Did they...
Dear granddaughter, when I came to America, I was able to fly on a plane, but in those early days, people had to come by boats. First, there were sailing ships. Then around the turn of the century, steamships were used. When heading to New York, immigrants traveled across the Atlantic on a ship for 3 weeks in crowded below-deck quarters called steerage. They ate black bread, boiled potatoes, and water soup. As the immigrants sailed into New York Harbor, they sailed past the Statue of Liberty on their way to Ellis Island. When the immigrants saw the Statue of Liberty, they knew they had arrived in the United States. Once the immigrants reach the United States, they usually have to wait on board the ship for days because the immigration station was so crowded. Everybody coming to America had to check in at an immigration station before they were allowed to live here. This is where they kept track of everyone entering the country. But not everyone who came to America got to stay. If an immigrant was sick, he or she might be forced to go back to his or her country. In 1892, Ellis Island welcomed 17 million people to America. On the West Coast, immigrants usually landed at the Angel Island Immigration Station in San Francisco Bay. Millions of these arriving immigrants stay in the cities where they landed. On the East Coast, that was New York City. For most immigrants, these cities were a whole new world. New York was like no other place they had ever seen. Many immigrants had lived on small farms in Europe and had hoped to buy land in the United States, but very few could afford to do that. So they often settled into crowded neighborhoods. A lot of immigrants live with relatives or friends in poorly built apartments called tenements. Tenement life was a hard one. 5 to 6 people would have to sleep in one tiny room. It was dark and stuffy, with too few windows for light or air. The streets outside were always noisy and dirty. Most immigrants worked long hours with little pay. As a matter of fact, wages were so low that everyone in the family, even young children, had to work. This was just to earn enough money for food. Factory businesses were growing and crowded with workers. Women and even children worked in factories. The cities in the Northeast eventually grew much larger and more crowded because of the great many immigrants who wanted to settle there. But even with those difficulties, immigrants were determined to make a life for themselves here. One way the immigrants were able to cope with these difficulties was to form communities based on the various ethnic groups. An ethnic group is a group of people from the same country, people of the same race, or people with a common way of life. These ethnic communities or neighborhoods could be found in just about every area of the United States. New York City is packed with neighborhoods based on ethnic communities. Many Italian families settle in a New York neighborhood called Little Italy. There are the traditional outdoor cafes here, as well as stores that sell Italian products, everything that reflects their culture back home. The largest Chinese population in the United States live in Chinatown, which is in San Francisco. Los Angeles' largest ethnic community is a Latin American neighborhood located in East Los Angeles. These Latin American neighborhoods were known as barrios. A barrio is a neighborhood of Spanish-speaking people, and many of the people in these barrios are from Mexico and Central and South America, or are the children or grandchildren of these immigrants. Like most other new immigrants to the United States, few Mexicans spoke English or knew people here. Just to be able to talk with people in their own language make them feel more at home.
Dear grandfather, it is nice to know that there are neighborhoods of people in the city who are from the same country. It will help those who feel homesick and those who need help getting used to their new country. Those cities must have gotten very big. Where did everyone?
Dear granddaughter, yes, the cities got quite large. But soon, other cities were opening factories and offering jobs. Many immigrants went to these other cities from the larger cities. Some immigrants, such as the Germans and Dutch, traveled to the middle of the United States and became farmers. They settled primarily in the states of Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Some of the towns the immigrants moved to were named for the places they came from. For example, towns like Germantown, Ohio, and Holland, Michigan. Not only did people bring themselves to America when they immigrated here, but they also brought their cultures. A person's culture includes his or her language, art, games, music, clothing, food, and religion. These are the things that make them special or different from other ethnic groups. Immigrants brought many different customs and celebrations. Color Easter eggs came from Russia, St. Patrick's Day from Ireland, and a unique New Year celebration from China. Chinese New Year is celebrated each year in Chinatown with a colorful parade and loud firecrackers. The Dutch brought the celebration of St. Nicholas, or Santa Claus, to this country. Food is another part of the many cultures that can be seen all over America. Immigrants from Mexico first brought tacos. Italian immigrants brought spaghetti. Chinese immigrants brought egg rolls.
Thank you. Dear Grandfather, life in America sounds very exciting. There are so many different cultures to learn about. I will have fun trying all of the different foods. Once you come to America and check in with immigration, how do you become a citizen of the United States? Do you go
Dear
to...
granddaughter, to become a citizen, you have to go through a process called naturalization, which means that you have to live in the United States for 5 years and then pass a test. You also have to know English so you can answer the questions on the test. The first part of the test is filling out a form that tells all about yourself. Second, you answer questions about the history of the United States and its government. Third, you meet with a judge who is able to grant citizenship. Fourth, you take an oath of loyalty to the United States.
I will support and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America.
An oath is a promise that what you say is true. Finally, you receive a certificate of citizenship.
Someday, that's what I'd like to be, a United States citizen. I know this after reading the letters Grandfather Young sent to me. He taught me so much about the history of immigration in the United States. Today, people still move here from other countries around the world. Immigrants still come from Europe, while other immigrants come from Africa. More are now arriving from Mexico, Central and South America. Other immigrants have come from Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines. Large groups of immigrants also come from China, Vietnam, India, and other countries in Asia. Over 17 million people have arrived here since 1965. So in the United States, everyone is different, but the same. I am no longer afraid that I will not fit in.
For more great curriculum-coordinated programs, call 1-800-483-3383 or visit us online at schoolvideos.com.